Okay, thanks very much. So what I was going to talk to you about is York's local transport strategy and the work we are doing to develop that. And really what I'm hoping to do is, although I've seen that Anna has already circulated some comments on the individual components of the strategy, but in a way this presentation is a bit of a call to action. We need people to feed back to us about the local transport strategy. It is stronger if it enjoys support. So if you get one thing from this presentation, I would say it is really, really important to feed back into the process. And I'll say a little bit about that later. Okay, so could we have the next slide, please? So why are we doing a local transport strategy in York? Why are we doing one? Why are we doing one now? The big reason for this is York and North Yorkshire, as many of you will know, is heading towards becoming what's called a mayoral combined authority through a devolution process. And from May, all being well, we will have an elected mayor, and that elected mayor will become the transport policy, or will formulate transport policy for the York and North Yorkshire region as a whole. So not just York, but also North Yorkshire. Obviously, we need in York to be very clear what we want our transport policy to be, what we want the mayor to enact on our behalf, and how we want the funding that the mayor has to be divided, and also influence the process of seeking more funding for doing more measures. And as I say, the mayor will be the transport authority. So the mayor will have, even though York will remain the highways authority, the mayor will be very important in determining what policies York follows, and how those are funded and how they are enforced as well, because the mayor will also take on the position of the current crime commissioner, and will therefore be able to influence police behaviour, particularly around enforcement. We were hoping by this time that we would have some clear guidance from the Department of Transport about what they wanted to see in local transport plans. Unfortunately, that hasn't been forthcoming. Nonetheless, we've continued with defining our local transport strategy for York in any case. So we're consulting on the policies at the moment, and know that there are a series of policies which are form part of the consultation. That started in the middle of November, and it runs until the beginning of February. And the intention is that once we've consulted on that, we will put together a draft high-level strategy for March, when hopefully it will be adopted by City of York Council, and then it will be able to inform the negotiations that the City of York Council has with the mayor once the mayor is in place from May. Okay, so next slide, please. So what do we know so far about transport in York and about public attitudes towards transport? Well, obviously York has a very important carbon reduction strategy. We're looking to be a carbon net zero by 2030. And when we did a consultation earlier in 2021, we found out that 94% of the people who responded to our questionnaire said that they thought City of York Council has a key role in reducing carbon. And 3/4 of the people also thought that the development of an efficient and affordable transport system was key to this, and that was the most popular measure. And this is something that actually you tend to find pretty much everywhere you ask these questions. People think it's very important that climate change is tackled, and that councils and central government have a really key role in this. We asked some questions about how people use their cars in York, and actually the results of this were a little bit surprising to me, and very, very interesting. So we found out that 88% of the people who answered our questionnaire, which was about 2,500 members of the public in York, so it was a substantial sample, made less than 50% of their journeys by car. And actually only about 17% of the sample used a car every day. And 18% of the sample used one less than once a month, and I think it's reasonable to imply that anybody who has that level of car use probably is not a car owner either. And that would correspond broadly to the sort of 20 to 30% of households in York that we think don't use cars. So whilst we're often told that car use is the most important, most valuable mode for getting around York, actually, the vast majority of people in the city use cars for less than half of the journeys that they make. And that's very important. York remains a city which is where a lot of the movement requirements of the city are realised by people walking and cycling and using public transport rather than necessarily by car. And that's probably something that you wouldn't see in a lot of other UK cities, and it does speak to sort of ongoing trends and a culture of using active and sustainable transport. When we ask this question, we asked these questions in 2021. When we asked them, 34% of the sample that we spoke to actually saw their car use as falling over the next 5 years, which was twice as many as the number of people who thought their car use would increase. And at the time, we were very pleased with that result. Actually, interestingly enough, a couple of days ago, I was just doing some analysis of the information that we've had so far back from the survey we're doing at the moment, which obviously is still open at the moment, so we haven't got all of the responses. But at the moment, we see fairly equal numbers of people seeing their car use as falling as seeing it as increasing. Now, whether that is a result of the end of the pandemic or changes in the reliability of the bus and rail network, there could be many different reasons, but obviously it's a trend that we would prefer not to be seeing. The biggest transport change that people foresaw themselves making in the 10 years following us asking a questionnaire in 2021 was adopting an electric vehicle. And as we always find with these things, there was a really wide range of views about the shortcomings of the existing sustainable modes, including a whole load of views about the relative safety of pedestrian, walking in York, but also cycling. Okay, so do we want to go on to the next slide, please? So this feeds through really into 4 really big challenges that York has that it needs to address through its next local transport plan, and some of which I've seen sort of prefaced a little bit in the chat, in fact. The biggest challenge really is growth versus decarbonisation. Obviously, we have a target to become carbon net zero by 2030, but against that is a city where York is an attractive city. People want to come and live in York. We have problems with affordable housing. Therefore, there is a need to construct more homes in and around the city. And there is a big question about how we accommodate that growth in such a way that it doesn't set back our decarbonisation ambitions. And a lot of that is about ensuring as much as possible that where we do have growth, we can accommodate the movement requirements of that growth through public transport and active and sustainable travel. And there is an awful lot of work going into looking at some of these new development sites and trying to work out how best to accommodate that. But it is a difficult thing to achieve within the context of all the other things that you have to balance up when you are making decisions about where to place new development and how to negotiate with developers to ensure that that development can be provided in a way that's viable and also delivers things like affordable homes. Our second big challenge, and I think today is perhaps a particularly big day in this, is because of the change in blue badge access to the centre of York, is a question about how we both cater for the heritage of York and preserve the things, particularly in the centre of York, that are unique to York, particularly around the street scene, and some of the constraints that street scene has, with the need to be able to provide access to everybody. And I think there are some quite big issues there. I mean, I know from some of the things I have to get involved with where measures that are provided to improve the situation for one group can cause problems for other groups. So there's a constant need to work very hard with different groups to be able to both improve the accessibility of the city for everyone, but at the same time preserve its heritage and preserve the way that it feels. The next challenge is to establish consensus. I sometimes think there's a bit of an over-focus on transport in York, certainly when we did the local plan examination. A comment that was made by somebody from outside the city is that they'd never been somewhere where transport was such a local hot topic. But we have plans. They will probably involve changing things. How do we establish consensus for that? And then the final challenge that we have is around phasing of measures and how we fund them. The big questions are when you have a particular profile of funding, what should you phase to do first? What can you afford initially? What measures might you take forward that help you do other things later? So we'll be talking about this a lot more in the transport strategy itself, and obviously that will form part of what we take to the mayor. So next, and I think final slide really is just a call to action to get involved. So please have a look at our big transport conversation. I know that Anna has already circulated the details of where you can find it. And I think at this point, very, very happy, very interested to take questions and comments. Thank you very much.